are bringing to you and the products. I couldn't say it with a straight face. All right, my name is Scott Hanselman. Thank you very much for coming to my talk. I appreciate it. This is an overview of the Microsoft Web Stack of Love. We've got a lot of cool. You know, this is not metro enough. There we go. So we released a lot of really cool stuff lately. You saw a lot of it in the keynote. So I'm not going to rehash a lot of the stuff in the keynote. What I kind of wanted to do was show you kind of the cafeteria plan. I want to do a bunch of little demos. Some will be basic, but some will be more advanced. The assumption is that you know that you can go up to www.asp.net, and you know that we have a lot of really great tutorials. We actually updated with all new tutorials on Tuesday, so we've got free stuff up there. If you go to asp.net, click on Getting Started. Under Tutorials, we've got all new tutorials in EF Code First, all new Getting Started with MVC, piles of new videos from Pluralsight, a bunch of great stuff there. So I won't show you too many real basic things. I'll show you some kind of the power of the product type demos. We've got MVC3 and the new tooling, MVC scaffolding, and Steve Sanderson, I believe, is in this room at 2 o'clock showing that. IIS Express, I'll show a lot of that. SQL Compact 4, the Magic Unicorn is wonderful. We'll talk about that. It's all going to be demos. No slides, except for this one slide. And this slide. And this other slide. And then maybe another slide. It was actually, originally I was going with Line Feed the Ninja. I thought that would be too obscure, so I went with Enter the Ninja instead. Phil Hack was like, the first airbender? No, the last airbender. Dude, Phil, really, you need to work on your array math, brother. I mean, maybe if there was one airbender, then it would be the last and the first, but no, dude. Array indexing, it's not Visual Basic, my friend. And then at the end, we'll show you a super early preview of Entity Framework migrations. And by that I mean that Rowan, one of the PMs on the Entity Framework team, had his buddy send me a build last night. Like zipped it up and sent it. And I think he may have sent it from a Hotmail account. So if they don't shut down the club before the end, I'll be able to show you migrations. Okay? That's it. Oh, hey, I'm done. Goodbye, everybody. All right. One of these buttons will get me back. All right. Let us begin. I've got Visual Studio on my machine. And by the way, actually, if you go over to the ASP.NET website to MVC, there's a couple of new buttons here. This button right here says Install Visual Studio Express, but it's actually been updated. This is the Get Everything, I Don't Care, Just Do It button. And this has been updated where if you have nothing, you'll get Visual Studio Express and MVC and SP1 and IIS Express and everything. If you don't have Express, you have Visual Studio proper, we'll upgrade you to SP1 and then give you all the goodness. So it is literally to get you anything you want. And I actually use this button to get my VMs and stuff ready. It's a really great way to make a machine go from nothing to a development all at once. So definitely be aware of that. That's how you can get the new stuff that just came out. And make sure you don't miss anything. File, new project, la-di-da-di. OK, blah, blah, blah. It's new, it's wonderful. I'm trying to save you guys time here. Okay? Don't think of it as laziness, Phil. You checking email? So disrespectful. At least you didn't insult me publicly like the goo. Make a or person class. Prop top. Okay. He can type. If we say add new controller, this is all new. And these templates here can be extended. And you can see that mine are, because I installed MVC scaffolding. MVC scaffolding is what Steve Sanderson's going to show. And you can look at how he extended that, so then you can get in here as well, or you could extend MVC scaffolding. So if I click there, excuse me, that is going to use Steve's scaffolding rather than the default stuff. So you really have total control of what you want to do. So now this is running Steve's. Chug, 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 PowerShell, PowerShell. Notice how Steve's stuff is appearing in the package manager. This package manager is part of NuGet that you'll get when you install MVC. And he created for me a bunch of stuff. We've got views. And in Steve's stuff goes a little bit farther because the default scaffolding in MVC Tools update had to be kind of locked down at a certain point and shipped with the product. But Steve's stuff is up on nuget.org, which is our package management site. And Steve can be updating that. So we're going to see interesting new scaffolding coming from Steve and hopefully from the community over the next couple of months. Nuget.org, if you're not familiar with it, is our gallery site. I think we've got a bunch of packages up here now, don't we, Phil? Let's look at the stats. Stats.nuget.org. So look, 1,100 unique packages, 2,000 total packages, and hey, we might even hit 500,000 in the middle of this talk if I hit F5 enough. And with the default projects, I'm having a little trouble with my network here. By default, the project template for MVC includes Entity Framework, jQuery, and Modernizer. And then I can either go here and say like official package source and then download things, or I can come down to the console. For example, I could say install, tab, package, Elma. And I hit tab there, and that's actually picking from the list in the sky. That's using OData to talk to the sky. So then I've just added Elma to my project. Elma is called Error Logging Modules and Handlers, and it is the greatest thing since God talked to Moses. Too much? Too much? Well, okay. I take this evangelist thing very seriously, so. So I'm going to visit my site. I'm going to make some errors. I'm hitting my application, and I'm visiting some sites that don't exist, some sections of my site that don't exist, causing errors. And then I'm going to go and visit elma.axd, and then I'm going to get an error log. It's like TiVo for yellow screens of death. So it's actually showing me everything that was going on at the time that that error happened. I can save it to a database. I can save it to memory. I can save it to XML files. I can share it in web forms. It's really, really powerful. This is a great example of a piece of software that was hard to do and hard to install. It's open source. It's wonderful. It's been around for literally years, 6, 7 years. But it's been hard to configure. NuGet makes that possible. Very, very cool. Entity Framework Code first makes this possible, being able to just say something like person and then scaffold out a bunch of stuff. Let me try something interesting. We scaffolded out person. Let's see what that page looks like. Person. Is it I think person, I think I named it something wrong. The controller, I called it, did I seriously call it default? All right. We're going to go ahead and visit the default one page. Hey, what happens in Vegas, people? So I've got first and last. If I go and say, create new person, so where did that go? Well, if I fire up SQL Management Studio, check out databases, there it is. By default, if you tell Entity Framework Code first nothing, I didn't mention databases, I didn't mention database names, I didn't mention connection strings, it's going to go and just make a database using ./SQL Express. In the demo, in the keynote, you saw me add SQL Compact Edition. That then told it that, no, all of our stuff's going to be done in Compact Edition, and that's why that file showed up in app data. So in this example, I'm using SQL Express. In the other, we use SQL Compact. I open that guy up. There's my people database. Okay? I'm going to torch that guy. This is the new default template. You saw in the keynote that it was HTML5. We got some like rounded corners and stuff because that's what you'd have to do when you want to show someone using HTML5. Round a few corners. Most of the Microsoft guys round a few corners and go like this. See, look, it's HTML5. That's great. We now ship something with MVC. It's called Modernizer from a guy named Paul Irish, who's a pretty cool dude. And I'm going to get rid of these because they are visually annoying and are going to mess up my IntelliSense. This Modernizer is a library that lets you use HTML5 things and style HTML5 elements on browsers that don't support it. It makes it really... Hello? Want to talk to him? Okay. Answer and I'll say, hey, what's up? I'm going to remove Modernizer. And then something totally unrelated to JavaScript happens. I torched the database while I was running. Yeah, thanks. That's why the guys in the front, all the front row here is Microsoft guys, like, oh, don't click that. Oh, God. It's like watching a three-legged dog, right? You know he's going to get where he's going, but it's just really sad to watch. Oh, Hanselman. So I'm going to bring up Expression Super Preview, and I'm going to hit this. This is actually kind of cool. You may not know that Expression Super Preview is pretty sweet in Service Pack 1. And the reason is that not only do you have stuff like all the different IEs, but there's this remote browsers beta. So I can actually go and say, well, show me what this looks like on Safari on a Mac. So I'll compare. I have Safari on the Mac and an IE6. So there's IE6, looking awesome. There's Safari on a Mac, looking slightly more awesome. And I can go and say, well, show me IE9 versus IE6. And I can line up and see how things worked out. So that, obviously, IE6 looks like crap. Switch back over here. We'll put Modernizer back in. Modernizer, again, shipping with MVC. Oh, nice little piece of open source software. Refresh both of these, and then IE6 sucks less. Don't clap for IE6 sucking less. What's wrong? You should be like, no! Don't make it happen. Okay, so I'm going to go to IE6 countdown, where we count down to the death of IE6. Okay, I'm going to click here. You like that? Let's all clap for the death of IE6. Hey now, let's not be mean though. I didn't say whoop for the death of IE6. I just kind of a respectful golf clap was what I was looking for. So there's this great banner that you can go here and you can add this to your site. So I'll just take this IE6 banner, come back over here and we'll hit refresh. Now I can advertise to people who work in corporations that their company sucks. All right. So Modernizer is rockin' sweet, and I would encourage you to spend some time with that. Actually, you know, speaking of HTML5, why don't we do this? Let's add a prop date time, birth date, and then I will go and re-scaffold that stuff. Let me see if I can remember how to do this. I can do it from the command line, or I can do it from the UI there. Scaffold, controller. I had all silly names, though. I'm afraid. What do you think, Phil? Scaffold, controller, I think we call it person. See all these options? I can hit tab. Controller name, so I got to make sure it's got the stupid one name. Default 1. Controller force. Let's see if that works. See? It's actually just got modified. So we just added birth date, so now we're going to rescaffold this stuff out. Let's run this. And we'll hit default 1. Birth date's now there. Hit create new. Birth date, if I do a view source, is type equals text. So it's not an HTML5 date, possibly because no browsers would Opera support it. But still, it's not HTML5 if I want to use all the stuff. So I'm going to go to Add Library Package and go here, and I think it's called the MVC HTML5. Is that what it's called? There we go. I know because it has an awesome logo. Click on that, hit Install. Watch on the right-hand side. This folder, Editor Templates, just showed up. This is an extremely clever way that this community guy made this happen. Editor templates override data types. So when you go in ASP.NET MVC and say, give me a date, it goes and gives you a text box. And here it's saying, well, here's what I want dates to look like. So he's gone and overridden dates and date times. So he makes a text box, but he makes it a type date time, which is pretty cool. So a very clean way for him to have added HTML5 with here, and I didn't have to do anything. I wouldn't even actually have to recompile. So I'm going to go and refresh this. I see that the date time got really big, got really wide there. So I'm going to go into the CSS, look for input, put in date time. We'll make that a little smaller. Okay? But it still is not a date time because IE9 doesn't support date times, right? So you're like, oh my goodness, IE9, that just came out. They should feel really bad, right? Why don't they support date times? Well, Chrome and Firefox also do not support date time, but Opera does. So let's paste this in and see what Opera looks like. Wow, that's way better. No, it's cool. They support daytime, so awesome, those guys. I didn't say anything. You can do it, Opera. Yes, good job. So what I would really like, now I have a situation where I've got this input box that's a date time, and I'd really like it to look right everywhere, and I'm sure Opera users are using Opera because they want that support. So I want to use the native date time support if you have it, and I want to use something else if you don't. So how would I want to do that? Well, I've got already on my machine, because I've got MVC, I've got jQuery UI. So maybe I want to use jQuery UI. Well, I could drag that in and make that a script, but then that means everyone would get jQuery UI, even people who maybe don't need it. So what I really want to do is write some code that would say, if you don't support datetime, then use this JavaScript for a datetime. Right? I want to basically say, you don't support this, so I'm going to force you to support it in an old-fashioned way. I'm going to modernize your browser. So we're going to go script, make a little script, and we'll do the OpenResig function. I'm using the JScript extensions that you can download from the extension manager to make my life ever so much easier. And here we'll say, if not modernizer, input types dot date. I'm probably going to miss some curly braces here, friends. If you don't support dates, then go and load jQuery UI 1.8.11.min.js, comma, sorry, I keep breathing and making my mic go off there. It's the one thing about JavaScript, you never know. It's like regular expressions. Right, and then you show it to your buddy, and he's like, "Ah, you guys." Seriously, how hard is that? That's why I hate JavaScript people. See, real programmers, they type data time because they don't do JavaScript work. There we go. Date time. Okay, now I wait. There we go. I was like, it has a green squiggly, so my grammar is wrong somewhere. I wasn't sure what to do. OK, so that looks about right. So if you don't have dates, then go and get the script and then make it work. Here, hit refresh, click. Awesome. That demo totally worked the way I wanted it to. I think I actually have to bring in the base, probably core. Just do all? Really? That's such a Microsoft thing to do. Just bring in the 1.5 megs of CSS. It'll be fine. Dude, I was trying to bring in like the minimized kind of, no, no, man, all. Cool. So now that'll work, actually. And interestingly enough, what I just did, that would also work on IE6. Because jQuery UI supports IE6. IE6 doesn't care if you say input type equal date. It'll go, I don't know what that is. Display it as a text box. So right there, I'm using HTML5, but it's working nice on down-level browsers, which is kind of cool. Looking at my time here. All right, so that's wonderful. Let's do some more code stuff. Let's do code first. So we've been seeing a lot of basic code first examples like blog and blog post and one-to-many. So I wanted to do something a little bit more complicated. Here is blog and blog posts. So we've got public class blog. It's always awesome when people try to open a drink really slow. Like instead of just going, they go. Nobody noticed that. Blog has a collection of posts. Now, post is more interesting. We've got a lot of attributes on that. These are all things that you can do to influence how your entity model, your in-memory class model, is going to affect your database. So here we've got like titles required. We saw that in the keynote. But I can also say things like max length 200 and influence it going from an nvarchar max to an nvarchar 200. I can even hard code database column types if I really know more than the default, if I know that I want things done a certain way. Notice on line 54 there, we're going to actually store a photo in the database. But if you're a database person, you're like, well, that doesn't really feel right because I'm going to have like all these columns, and then one's going to be a bunch of bytes. That's going to mess up the layout of my database. There'll be fragmentation, things like that. From a programmer perspective, it makes sense that a post might have a photo, but from a database person's perspective, they'd like it to work a little differently. So I'll show you how we can fix that. And then notice that posts have tags, a collection of tags, and then tags have, let's go down a little bit, posts. So you actually have a many-to-many relationship there. And it'll actually create the intermediate table to handle that. Now, if I want to influence this post and make it look a little different, my blog context, that's the thing that holds those objects. So when I'm saying like db.posts, I'm talking to a db context. That's new in EF 4.1. There's an override called onModelCreating. And in onModelCreating, I can go and map things using a Fluent API and give hints on how I want things to look. There's a lot of flexibility in it. So onModelCreating passes in this model builder, and then you influence that model builder. And then however that model builder is left, EF will use that to go and create the database a certain way. So for example, on line 29, we're saying, I don't want pluralized stuff, right? When you say person, I want the table called person. I don't want it to be called people. So we're actually removing a convention. You can make your own conventions, right? There's these, I'm removing it from that collection. Then lines 32 through 42, that's all one line, right? That's using that Fluent API. And we're saying, I have to read it like it's English, right? So it's like, hey, take the entity post, map all of these properties to a table called post, and then map this property to a table called post photo. Now, again, Entity Framework supports model first. That means you drag around stuff in an Entity Framework model in a graphical way. It supports database first, because if you know SQL, you just know how to do this yourself, and you just make the SQL. Or it supports code first. It all depends on what makes you happy. All three are going to be supported, and you should use the one that makes you the happiest. You can do code first type layouts, even if you made the database first, as long as they line up. Totally up to you. There's a lot of flexibility. I like this just because that line 32, it really resonates with me. It just makes a lot of sense that I want to map these properties here with a lambda, and I want to map that one to post photo. It helps me visualize the database a little bit better. Now, in the global ASAX, databases that don't exist need to be initialized. So here we're saying set initializer. We're saying when I need a blog context, here's the initializer that's going to do it. All that can happen by default, but in this case I've overridden it because I want more control. One of the things I've overridden is seed, so I can actually seed the database, because some databases, if you drop it and bring it back, you're going to want to put in maybe some enums or some lookup tables or whatever, or some test data, depending on how you want to do your application. So here, in the seed, this is our first chance opportunity to load up our database with test data. Okay, makes sense? So let's go and see if we can run some scaffolding on this and see what the database looks like. Okay, so we're going to use, see if the command line's got it. Yes, scaffold, controller, post, DB context, blog, context. So this is going to give me my controller, my views for posts and for blog. And while that's happening, I want to go over here and I'm going to right-click on my project. And I'm going to say Open in Explorer. I'm going to go up one level and show you this packages folder. That's where all the NuGet packages are. You can see that the repository that it comes from is there, and then MVC scaffolding is here. It's all out in the open. This is what I like about the new Microsoft, because before it was like drag a data grid, and then a miracle happens, and you have an application. But now everything can be looked at and opened up. Like even this new package file, this new package, I can double-click on that, and that's actually just a zip file. I can use the NuGet Package Explorer. I can poke around in it, see all sorts of cool stuff. So here, underneath Tools, are some interesting things. While that was scaffolding, how was it happening? Well, like for example, the views, not there, here, are actually just T4 templates. There's ASPX versions of this, Razor versions of this, VB, and C#. So everybody gets to play. These are the views that were being used while that generation was occurring. So let's just pick one of those up and look at it. All right, so here we've got like, does this page have a layout? Does it have a master page? If it does, output this. You can update these, make your own MVC scaffolding, and then run it internally at your enterprise. And we're actually going to do a talk called NuGet for the Enterprise at TechEd, if anybody's going to be there. Talk about how to set up your own internal NuGet server and make your own standards and your own things. Because we're always generating these really basic CRUD things, but maybe you guys have all standardized on YUI, and you have a whole layout, and da-da-da-da-da. Don't think about scaffolding as a way for Microsoft people to do demos. It really is a way for you to jumpstart what you're doing. And if you don't go and customize scaffolding, if you don't go and make the templates the way you want, if you don't go and modify how it behaves, then you are missing out, and you have kind of drank the Kool-Aid, and you do think it's just making demos that we do fun. From the Package Manager console, I'm going to just type in get scaffolder. And what this is showing are all of the scaffolders that are on the system right now, and these are all MVC scaffolders. And if I say, like for example, get scaffolder view. So when I say scaffold view, it's going to use a Razor view. That's where you can get in. You can make these. You're using Spark or you're using some other engine, knock yourself out. I could go here and I could say install package. I think it's called link to SQL scaffolding. Run get scaffolder again. Now link to SQL scaffolding is in there. So each of those verbs is totally flexible. So you can scaffold test methods, actions and unit tests, whatever makes you happy. Really dig into this. It is not just for making little blog demos. I would encourage you to check it out. So let's go ahead and run this. What do we call it, blog? All sorts of things are going wrong today. Blogs. All right, so let's look at our SQL database. So it got created. Now, one way that we can visualize this, which is kind of interesting, because you always see the entity framework guys dragging around tables and stuff, is remember that we wrote all this with code. So why don't we go and say, add new item, and remember that Visual Studio has this thing called the class diagram, which how we let you visualize your code, not your database, it's your code. Let us pick up models and drag it in here. So here is the code first model, because it's just classes. It doesn't know anything about the database. Okay? Then, what if I went into Server Explorer and brought up my database connection for my newly created database and made a database diagram that looked like what the database looks like? So let's see. Add new diagram. Add all these things. Arrange tables, maybe? Cool. So now I've got my database on the right using the diagramming stuff built into SQL tools. I've got my classes on the left, and you can see that tag and post are related with a table called tag post, because they had a many-to-many, remember that? Then we've got post and post photo automatically associated as well. So I found that to be a really, really helpful way for me to learn EF code first, was to have my classes on the left and a class diagram, my database on the right there. And then when you're doing development, you do have your database dropping all the time. You use that initializer that I showed, blog initializer. There's a number of different choices that you can use. This one here we're saying drop and recreate database if the model changes. And then you can go and write your own database initializer, or you'll see in the future that we'll have other initializers. So when you're doing development and you're rapidly evolving your database, you would probably just drop and seed and drop and seed and drop and seed. Then when you get it working, take the SQL file and then check that in and go from there. So that really helped me work with code first. Let's take a look at IIS Express. One of the things I haven't actually talked about too much is how IIS Express fits into all of this. If I right-click on this project here, and I say Use IIS Express, actually, let's even make a fresh one so we don't do anything too goofy. We'll make a fresh project real quick. Okay. And we'll make that new one there. And then see all those NuGet packages are getting added down there in the corner. Then we'll just give him a new proper person. Okay. And then we'll scaffold out an actual person controller. I need to compile that. Add controller, person controller, person context, add. Okay, so you've used to seeing Visual Studio Web Development Server. I think it used to be called Cassini. You guys familiar with that, right? That's the tiny web server that runs right there, this guy here, the bubble server. And it's got some limitations. It's irritating in a number of ways. Let me count the ways. Doesn't support SSL, won't run on port 80. It's hard to get WCF stuff working, doesn't do certificates. It sometimes just doesn't work the way you want. It doesn't support the system.web server stuff. You can't install your own HTTP modules and handlers unless you put them up in the ASP.NET pipeline. It doesn't feel like IIS because it's not IIS, right? So stop using it. Seriously, you don't ever have to use it again, I promise. You can do two things. You can either right-click and say Use IIS Express. Do you want to do this? Yes, I do. That's why I clicked on it. Or you can say Tools Options. I do a lot of customization. And then you can ask Damien where you click that checkbox. Projects and Solutions. I knew that. And then this area is intentionally left blank. And then I like to install like applications like 5 gigs of apps from a CD and then run this app, takes 2 gigs of memory, and then go Tools Options and go boop. So all the rest is blank. Just imagine things are happening when you check that box. Okay. So I'm going to run that. And now this guy comes up, this little stack of servers. That's IIS Express. So we'll click on him. And then we can see the So Fresh and So Clean site name and the PID for that site name and the URL. IIS Express, I think it runs on XP and up, doesn't it? Just run XP. Is not running as a service. It's running as me. So it's fully IIS, except I'm not running Visual Studio as administrator. It'll work on XP and up, and it is IIS. And I'll keep saying that over and over, like I'm like selling a sham wow. But wait, that's not all. IIS Express will also run on port 80. No, you're kidding. Hey, hang on, I'll show you. So application.config on your IIS installation is where, right? It's like deep in the bowels of the system somewhere. But IIS Express is running in a kind of user mode, right? So it's actually in my documents. So the config for your IIS Express is different from another person using your same machine. So I can go and edit application host config and things like that directly here. So what I wanted to try to do, and let's see if I can pull it off, is I want to run it as port 80 and allow it to be used outside my box so that people could actually talk to my machine. A lot of people want to do development like this, except their administrators in their IT department won't let them put IIS on their machine. Or if they go and they get Cassini working, they want someone, like a buddy or a tester, to talk to that machine from the outside. And it's not possible because Cassini won't listen to anything other than localhost. And then you'll go and you'll make hacks in your hosts file, and then but you still have to have that port. It feels gross, right? So let's try this. I got some snippets. One of the things that people need to remember is that in the old days, before HTTP.sys, and we still have this model in our heads, one port maps to one process, right? If you've got port 80, that port is going to be handled by such and such a process. And a request comes in on port 80, and the system says, who's registered for port 80? Oh, he's got it. Boom. And if you run an application that got to that port first, too late. Well, HTTP.sys now runs in the kernel, right? So HTTP.sys reserves all of that. It handles all that HTTP traffic. It's the thing listening on port 80. And it then hands it off to your process. So multiple processes can listen on one port. So I have a lot more control. But I have to reserve that port. So I'm going to blog about all of this stuff. But what we're going to do is I'm going to run one time as admin this command line. And I'm going to say with netsh, hey, I want to go and add an ACL. We all know what ACLs are, right? You know, access control lists. That says that everyone can access Hanselman W500 on port 80. So I'm setting that aside. Okay? And I think what I can do probably is do the same thing for, I'm not sure I need to do it for 4432 when I do this in a minute. May already be there. Okay, good. So now you can do this manually by going into the firewall and just adding a firewall exception for IIS Express. Or I can do it with a command line, just open that port. I actually, my buddy gave me this particular line. I did it just by clicking on firewall and said allow a program through the firewall. That IIS configuration, remember, is over here in my documents. So I can actually open that config file up. And my application, I think, was called Fresh and Clean. right? Everything for a reason. Because MVC application 98 is just not as memorable. So I can see here that So Fresh and So Clean is listening on HTTP on that goofy port on localhost. So why don't I copy that, say port 80, and put in Hanselman W500. Cool? Shut that down. Fire them up again. Then I'll come in here, and I could set this in the project if I wanted to, and I'll just put in Hanselman W500. And now I'm serving my just now developed MVC application on port 80, and people could potentially talk to this machine within my local subnet. So now it starts getting interesting. But everyone's talking about how you need to have like your logons and stuff secured by SSL. Remember how Twitter just changed this and Facebook just changed this because you don't want to send your passwords across the wire like that? Well, there's a couple things that I could do. I could go into my action methods and I could say require HTTPS. So I could go into my code and say for the account controller that needs to be SSL. Or I could go into the web config, and there's the system.web stuff that we're familiar with, but because this is IIS, and all of IIS, it really is IIS 7.5, I have a system.web server section, which means I have modules and stuff, that more powerful things. Any really complicated or realistic application inevitably ends up with some modules or some complexity. And I'll just put in this rewrite rule. And this rewrite rule says if you're going to account/logon or account/register, we're going to force you to HTTPS. So I didn't even have to change my links because it's going to redirect me. So I click log on, but of course no one's listening on SSL because I don't have a cert or anything like that. So that's not going to happen for me. So what I can do, and this is where it gets crazy. I was thinking, like, should I try to type it? Spend like 8 hours memorizing this? So I spent 7 hours, realized I couldn't do it, and instead figured you would forgive me. There are multiple ways to make certs. You can use like make cert in different ways, but this is the one that was given. What's significant is this, the name of the machine. If you had a host file thing and you wanted to call it template monster or whatever, you could do that too. Okay, so I just made that cert. Now I'm down here in my certificate store. Hit refresh. It's going to go off and check revocation on all these. This one here expired on 2036. You see this? 2036. I set that because I wanted to remember it. Okay? That cert now has a unique hash associated with it. I'll double-click on it. I'll go and grab its thumbprint. This funky number here. This is the GUID of that thing. And then I'm supposed to then pass that into a command that's cert hash. So I got a couple things that I could do now. I need to remove the spaces. I could go and remove them like that, but that would not be elite at all. So of course I will run PowerShell for no reason at all. I will then paste it in. Then I will say -replace, but that would be lame. So then I will pipe it to out clipboard, because that's badass. And then I will paste it in here. And I will pretend you did not notice that. So now I'm saying, hey, HTTPS, there's this cert that's cool with me. That's cert hash. So now I'm associating, saying that one's okay. All right? Now, I'll go back into my config file and tell IIS that HTTPS is cool in the gang. All right. Shut that down. Fire it up again, and hope to God it works. Dun, 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 dun. There's a problem. What, you mean I can't just make an SSL cert and make it totally trusted and it would not get a giant warning that I'm a bad person? Okay, so much for my man-in-the-middle attack. Well, what if I pick it up and drag it into trusted root certificates? Ain't nobody dope as me, I'm just so fresh, so clean. Whoopsh. That's right. SSL, port 80, trusted cert. Now suddenly my development environment looks a little bit more like my staging environment. It makes it easier to develop. It's a hassle. It's a hassle to have to go and deploy out to IIS and configure IIS and mess with all that kind of stuff. So now, of course, I could have done that with a hosts file and made a fake cert, but it would have actually looked like my own machine. Great way to punk your friends and office mates. PayPal.com, it's possible. I want YouTube video if anybody does it. So IIS Express, start using it. It is freaking awesome. It is extremely powerful. The example that I just gave you was Baroque, to be clear. Not broke, but Baroque. Complicated. But it's a complicated scenario. Certs are complicated. It is literally just as easy as press F5 and it'll run in IIS. All that SSL stuff, interestingly enough, is made easier, believe it or not, by WebMatrix. And don't worry, I'm not going to turn this into a WebMatrix talk. But if I go into WebMatrix and like bring in the bakery or something, and click on settings. So all that work that I just did. So what WebMatrix does is when they install WebMatrix, they give you a self-signed cert for free, and they reserve 443,000 all the way up to 444,000 or something. And it just click a button and it just works because they did all the cert work for you. It's not as classy as mine, and it does not involve PowerShell, but it's still really significant.
You can do that for
Show me how to do it. Did we add that? Oh, don't even tell me that the entire demo was a huge waste of time. Which of these should I pick? It's close. Too much? This is way easier.
Enable SSL enables
So you use the WebMatrix ones? You use the IIS Express ones or WebMatrix ones?
It's all IIS Express features, all everything
Nice. So that was added in SB1?
It's SB1.
Hey. Now, can I do 443 or is it just 44? Yeah, okay. So there was still validity in the last half hour of my life. Okay. So what Damo has told me, which would have been great to know yesterday, was that SB1 includes that same checkbox except in an obscure property grid. So then it's the same exact model, a self-signed certificate that was installed and then 443,000 and up. Okay, cool. I prefer my way. Yeah. That's pretty sweet. I did not know that. Rock on. Cool. Best part is it didn't completely invalidate the demo, because that would have been bad. All right. Which is frustrating because you were up here running through the demos with me like 5 minutes before. Yeah. So, sounds like checkbox for basic SSL, and then my crazy thing for if you really want your URL to look like. Okay. All right. What else? What else? What else is fun? Ooh, community stuff. Check this out, you guys. Where'd my one go? Fresh and clean. So we did the Open Source Fest yesterday, and saw some pretty cool stuff. You saw how I used the MVC HTML5 templates library. That was from the community. Elma is from the community, and Elma was a really cool log tracer. But check this out. If I go add library package reference and come up here, and I'm going to put on a system called Glimpse. You guys see this thing? You seen it? It's like it's spreading like crack. It's just like everyone's like, "Have you seen it? Did you get some? Oh my goodness!" And everyone else like, "What are they talking about? I want some." So we like Elma, right? Elma's the greatest, right? You can't think of anything in your life better than Elma. That would, I mean, Elma completed my life, right? You had me at Elma. But I just installed Glimpse, and I'm going to say /glimpse/config, and I'm going to just turn Glimpse on. And Glimpse is going to give me a glimpse into what's going on in my application. See the little crazy eyeball that's staring at me? Oh, not that eyeball. There. Does it say only for testing purposes? This is it's my main machine. I may be a victim of software counterfeiting. So I'm going to click on the little eyeball down here and check that out. So what's that? I don't know. It's a div, huh? It's freaking Firebug for MVC. So what it's doing is it's hooking in MVC3, they added all these hooks for dependency injection and hooks for places to look at your action invokers, filters, blah, 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 all the different stuff. It's insight into what's going on in your application. You may be familiar with Phil Hack's route debugger, right? Just like Cassini, you never have to use it again. So what Glimpse does is it gives me like a Firebug-like experience down here at the bottom. You can see my routes appearing down here. One of the things that I found really, really surprising, and Phil, maybe you can answer a question on this. Here I'm just viewing like home, but maybe I'll go and view like about. This is the views and the view engines that it went off looking at. So it went and said, hey, is there a web form view engine? Yeah, but I don't see that, I don't see that, I don't see that. And then it eventually found the about page here. It gives you a lot of insight into the flow of your application. It shows the partials. So I see that there are 8 view checks to see in the building of this page here. What if I went back to my global ASAX and went down in here? And what I'll do probably is I'll type this, and then there'll be a checkbox for it. So. Can I just remove one, or do I have to clear them and then add one back? How do I just remove one? Is that remove? Could you say that less condescending? Remove at? Oh, so I can't remove. How do I know it's 0? I don't have an instance. Is 0 it? Yeah. How would they know that? Oh, because of the order that they were in Glimpse. Okay. This demo's on you. Okay.
I mean, safer and clear.
Safety first. Now, I'm turning Glimpse on this way, but there's actually a bookmarklet that you can use that makes it easier to turn it on if you like. Rock on. So did that make my system faster, Phil? Probably. It absolutely makes your system faster. Because there's less things in that collection. It must. I don't know how. Maybe a millisecond. Who knows? But it's cool, though, because I never would have known that if I didn't have that insight. And that's what I think is really interesting. Whether or not it makes it faster is immaterial. What's cool about this, though, is that I can also do stuff like tracing. So what if I went into like my home about controller, and I did something like trace error. And something bad has just happened. And then we'll run that. And that appears up there. So my tracing stuff can actually be happening in the background. So I could go and instrument all my code in that way that we always do, right? Because we're all running trace regularly and then checking our trace logs. So remember trace.axd? You never have to use it again. So I thought this was a really, really great application. It actually shows you executed methods and how they got found, shows you your environment, configuration. Look at that. It's all in the browser. This is not a plugin, right? Let's just prove it, eh? Maybe we should bring up Opera. So here I got to hit glimpse again. Why are you laughing at me, man? Don't bring up Opera? Are you saying because it won't work? It's not tested? Okay, I won't test it right now. But that's actually, this is HTML down here. This is all magic in John Resick right here, right? Is it jQuery? Sweet. So this right here, brought down as a NuGet package, trivial to install, provides incredible value, and is so, so useful. This is a great example of why I keep using Lego when I talk about the web stack. Because before, the Lego pieces were the wrong size. You'd get these big Duplo kind of blah, 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 SharePoint. And then you'd get these little... and then you'd get these little tiny, like the little onesies, and they're always like the clear onesies that you get stuck on your toes when you're walking on the carpet, you know? And it's like, blah, 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 WCF. And now, the pieces fit together right. With all respect to the SharePoint guys, SharePoint uses OData now. And you can talk to any SharePoint list with OData. And WCF has JSON and POX and clean web services. And the stuff that Glenn Block and those guys are doing fits in nicely with our stuff. And you've got OData via jQuery. And we're shipping jQuery and Modernizer. And you can use Entity Framework Code first, or Model first, or Database first. And you can use it with SQL Server or SQL Server Compact. And SQL Server Compact's actually Xcopy deployable. And Web Deploy works. And you can click a freaking checkbox and get SSL. Suddenly the Lego pieces are the right size. And that's why, when I said in the keynote, and I mean this sincerely, that I have had more fun working on the web platform in the last year than ever before. And then you got something like a Glimpse, or an Elma, or an MVC HTML5 templates, or an IE9ify, or any of these other great plugins that you can just bring down as open source, where open source is as easy as add reference, and it's just fun. I was amazed that Scott Gu let me do it, but I don't know if you noticed in the keynote that my title, when they introduced me there, said Optimizing for Programmer Happiness. Microsoft's been spending a lot of time optimizing for programmer productivity. And productivity and happiness are actually related things. Rather than optimizing for productivity, if you optimize for fun and enjoyment and enthusiasm, the productivity will fall out of that. So I would really encourage you guys to start taking a look at these Lego pieces and figuring out which pieces that you like. If you don't like EF code first, make an nhibernate MVC scaffolder. If you have an AS400 that talks old school web services, that's fine. Come up with a scaffolder for that, or some kind of a system that will let you use the other Lego pieces. You already have Lego pieces. Snap them together the way that you want. I would encourage you to go to a couple different sessions. Steve Sanderson is here. He's come all the way from Bristol, England, and he's the guy that worked on MVC scaffolding. I believe he's talking in this room at 2. Come and see his talk. He's amazing. Phil is talking about MVC tonight at 5 o'clock. He's going to go much, much deeper in some of the stuff that's going on in the tooling. Definitely check that out. And then me and Phil tomorrow in the HaHa show are at, what time is that? 10:30, and we're going to do NuGet. We're going to talk all about NuGet. How do you make them? How do you publish them? Can you use NuGet in continuous integration scenarios? Are they hard to publish? What are some advanced examples? The Elma example was simple. Bring in a DLL. Works great. This Glimpse example is just such a powerful testament to what we've built with NuGet and MVC3. My name is Scott Hanselman, and thank you very much. Heat me up, audio guy. Are we still recording? No? All right. I got to show, heat me up. Even if we're not recording, I got to show migrations. Oh, crap. Oh, Lord, Lord, Lord. Even if we're not recording, this is still worth staying for. Hang on. Sorry, I just got worked up. I had a tear, and it was just... All right. So this guy here, So Fresh and So Clean models, let's go ahead and hit the database. Why is he telling me that that's in use? Do I have it open twice? Yes. All right. Person, controller. Person. Okay, so we're in Person Controller, SQL Management Studio, make sure it exists. So Fresh and So Clean, tables, people, columns, first and last. Okay? All right. Now, I'm going to go and I'm going to say add package reference, EF migrations. Oh, I got to do it from the console. Install package, EF migrations. Good. I'm going to change it to public date time birth date, get set. Come down here. If I type alias migrate, as you can see that migrate's actually an alias for update database schema. Hit migrate. It's going to look at the database context, the object, the code, and then it's going to look at the table. And it's going to compare the two. And it's going to figure out what it's going to do to the table to get it to the same mode that the code is in. And then it throws out a script to go and alter that table. So now I pop back over into SQL, hit refresh, bam. So they are working on migrations. We will see migrations very, very soon. Take a look at the ADO.NET team blog. Comment on the work that they're doing. Hopefully we'll see some bits that we can give you soon. And make sure that if you see a migrations guy walking around that you thank them for letting me show a daily build at MIX today to you guys. All right, thank you.